Hello, my name is Brian Largent. I'm with the ArcLight Group in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Allscripts ransomware attack that happened on about January 18, 2018. We don't know exactly when it happened, but that's when the reports kind of started rolling in. All we know for sure is what Allscripts has posted to the public, and that is they had a ransomware attack that took some of their systems down for a small subset of their organization, and they're working on getting that remedied and operational again. So what do we know from their Twitter feed? Well, we know that certain customers of theirs have claimed to have been down for more than 24 hours with massive impact of not being able to schedule surgeries, not being able to see patients, and so on. So I wanted to talk about disaster recovery planning because this is a really important topic, and what's happening to Allscripts could happen to anyone. Now, I don't know exactly what's happening to Allscripts, but I know how to recover from a ransomware attack because we've had to deal with it for customers that have called us out of the blue saying they have a problem. So let's dive into it's just a 9-point PowerPoint presentation. It's not a lot of PowerPoint, so I won't kill you with PowerPoint. But we're going to dive into this, and I'm going to try to cover some of that, and then we're going to answer just a couple of questions along the way. So here we go. So there's 3 basic types of server disasters. There's a hardware failure that's instantaneous. There's a data corruption, and then there's a computer virus. And we're going to explain each of these in a little detail. A hardware failure that's instant usually is a natural disaster or a accidental damage or an actual hardware failure itself where like a power supply dies or something like that. When a hardware failure happens like that, it's usually pretty instantaneous. Data is going in and then it stops going into the system and it's dead. That means that recovery is pretty simple. You just take your backups, your most recent backup, and you restore it onto another server, and you should be operational fairly quickly. That is if you have good enterprise-grade backups and systems in place. The second type is data corruption. Now, this one's a little bit messy. When you have data corruption, you really have to get into the system and figure out what's causing the data corruption, get that remedied. Then you have to figure out where the corruption resides and when it started. If you can figure out where the corruption resides and when it started, then you can go back to a certain point in time and restore data. Now, you're probably going to lose some data in this type of issue because people are putting data in, but it's being put in and then corrupted. Therefore, you have nothing to back up except corrupted data. So if the data is corrupted on old data, then you can probably restore old data from a point when it was actually not corrupted. So there's a little flexibility. There's a few things you're going to have to work around. But data corruption is not as bad as computer virus. When you have a computer virus, well, let's talk about what is a computer virus. It's a malicious code or program written to alter the way a computer operates. And it spreads from host to host by self-replicating and requires a host to live. A host is just a computer, a server, something like that. So if you have a computer virus on your system, it wants to replicate to everywhere on the network. So trying to figure out where all the places the virus is replicated to is very difficult. We've done it ourselves for customers that have called us in a panic. They have a virus on their system and they need to have us go in and figure out where it's at and get it cleaned off and get their systems operational again. Now, we've never had that for a customer that is a full service customer that relies on us for protecting their network, but we have had companies call us out of the blue and say, this is going on, please help us. So we've got a lot of experience with it. In the case of the Allscripts attack, what they had was they had a crypto ransomware virus. So what it does is it wants to self-replicate across the network, and then it starts to encrypt files. Well, what kind of files does it encrypt? Well, here's a list of the Locker ransomware, which is one of the more modern and up-to-date ransomwares that are out using an AES encryption algorithm. Very hard to decrypt without a key. Pretty much impossible. So what kind of files is it encrypting? Well, here's a list. Well, if you look at the gray arrows, the first thing I want you to look at is the VMware. It's pointing to a file called VMDK. A VMDK file is a virtual server. That is the entire operating system and applications. Anything stored in that becomes encrypted. The entire server is offline. We're not talking about just some data. We're talking about the entire operating system, the applications that are installed, and possibly data if you have a database on the same server as your app. When we talk about the SQL, it's encrypting SQLite, SQLite DB, SQL, MDB files, LDF, MDF. These are all Microsoft SQL files and various different third-party SQL files. If they become encrypted, you've lost your data. You may have your servers operational, but your database is encrypted. So you have to go back to a point in time and restore that. So there's different ways to recover from these instances. And usually companies will take both ways and try to work down both these tracks at the same time. So I have a light gray and a light blue track here. If you go down the light gray track, that's when you're just trying to clean the system up and get it operational. So you first, before you can do anything, no matter what your track is, you have to isolate the system. You do not want information going in and out of the system when you're trying to figure out how to recover the system from a virus, or in this case, a ransomware virus. So you isolate the system. Now you've got customers screaming saying, we can't get in our systems, we're not operational, so the clock is ticking. You need to get them operational as quick as possible. So the first thing you need to do is you need to discover the cause and the earliest instance of the virus, because that's going to tell you how far back you're going to have to go to restore your data. Then you're going to try to clean your system and recover the files. If it's just a couple of files that got encrypted, you can then possibly, if you can narrow them down to know where all the infections are, you can clean those off, recover those files, do some testing, and then return everything to service. You got to have a pretty high confidence level that you've got it cleaned off. And it's possible you might be able to do that. But more often than not, when you have a virus, a very smart virus that knows how to self-replicate, you have to go through this process, and that is to isolate the systems, discover the cause in the earliest instance, then you have to restore your stale server OS and apps. That means you have to go back to your backups to a point in time before the virus showed up, restore all of that data onto new hardware, new infrastructure, then you apply the missing updates like your Windows patches and SQL updates and so on, and you have to apply the patches and fixes for the application itself. A company like Allscripts is going to be applying updates, feature releases, and everything all on the way. So if the virus happened on the 18th and they're restoring data, they may have to restore and patch going back, 2 or 3 days or however long before they can be operational, depending on how long the virus is on there and how long it continued to run after that and people were putting data in and out of the system. So once you've done that, then you need to restore your most recent data. Depending on how your infrastructure is built will determine how that's done. For instance, if you've got all your SQL safe and it's secured and it didn't get touched by the virus, then you might just be able to mount your databases back up to your servers and your applications and get it operational pretty quick. But after all that, you still need to do internal testing because the applications themselves have had new patches and new updates, and you may have missed something. Your employees or your vendor may have missed something. They may not got everything patched. You don't want to just rush into production immediately. So you do your internal testing. If internal testing passes, then you want to do your production testing. And you don't want to roll that out usually to all of your customers. You want to roll it out to a small subset of customers. Those customers, if they're happy and things are working, then you're going to roll it out to a few more customers and a few more customers. Once you've reached a saturation point where you have enough customers that are successfully getting on and everything's working, you can return the entire system to service and be ready to answer any support questions as they come in. So how do you keep this from happening to begin with? Because obviously it's going to be a nightmare to try to come out of something like this. It's not like a server failure, which is what we all think of whenever we have a disaster recovery plan. We think of fire, flood, tornado, hurricane. But those are not what's going to get you. It's going to be a virus. It's going to be something like that where user interaction is creating the problem. So there's some things you can do. The internal defenses you can do are you lock down your systems and restrict unnecessary access. Do not let every employee have administrative access. Don't let every employee have full rights to systems. Don't let them have full rights to their local computers if they don't need it. They need to be able to do their job and the functions of their job, but that should be where the limit is. It shouldn't go beyond that. Then you need to have a managed and monitored antivirus on all systems. Now this is a very important one, because if you're just putting antivirus on your computers and you're not managing and monitoring it, then it becomes disabled, or something happens and it's no longer getting updates. You're not going to know about it. You need to have something that tells you whenever that antivirus is not checked in. The way our system does it is if we install an antivirus, it has a cloud console, and that antivirus will check in periodically with the cloud console to get updates and send it a heartbeat. If it becomes disabled or no longer receiving updates or not scanning the system, it notifies us because it didn't check in. So it could be completely removed off the system, but I'll still get an alert because my cloud console is notifying me whenever it can't connect. So next, you need to have active system monitoring. Just like the antivirus, you need to be monitoring everything on the systems. And when I talk about everything, I'm talking about applications being installed that are unauthorized. People are just going out to shareware sites and installing stuff. You need to know when that happens, and then you need to remediate that by removing those apps, talking to the employee, educating them on not installing those apps, and that's another very positive way of protecting your environment. Lastly, you need employee training and testing. This one is very overlooked. what most companies will do is they'll have a little training seminar when an employee starts in, and they'll give them the don't install software, don't take EPHI outside the organization, don't store credit card information. There's just a one-time training when an employee starts, and they feel like we've done everything we need to do. Well, there's more training you can do. We provide training for customers by actually sending them malicious emails. If the employee clicks on the malicious email, it will automatically send them to training and show them why they fell for the email and teach them how not to fall for that malicious email again. It's a fascinating training. It's very helpful. And then finally, we talk about perimeter defenses. What are the things you can do at the perimeter of your organization before a virus even gets in? Because the antivirus and the things you're doing on the systems only happen once something has gotten into your network. So your perimeter defenses are things like content filtering. You're blocking malicious websites, sites where the company has no business going to. You can also do what's called GeoIP, where you're blocking entire countries from being able to get in or out of your system. You have intrusion prevention. That's an active system that looks for attack vectors on your network, people trying to get in, and it'll actually block those. And then you need an intrusion detection. If someone tries to get in, you need it to be detected, and then the prevention system can kick in. You need antivirus on the gateway, not just on your computers. You need something that looks at all traffic coming in and out of your network, and if it looks like a virus or malicious code in some way, it's going to block it and let you know. And then just active system monitoring. Again, look at your perimeter just like you look at your internal systems. Look for problems, get alerts, and react to them. The final question we wanted to answer was, should you move your server to a hosting environment? In this case, with Allscripts, their environment. So if you have electronic medical record system and it's Centricity or Prime Suite from Greenway or Allscripts, whoever it might be, all those companies have hosting environments where you can not have any server infrastructure in-house and move your servers to their environment. And there's the hope that that's going to be better because they have an economy of scale, they're going to keep your costs down, they imply that they're going to be more HIPAA compliant. There's some positive implications on moving to a hosting environment. But that being said, having your server in-house does give you a degree of control. If you're having problems with your software vendor, you can bring in a third-party company to look at the database, to look at the server performance, and make sure that things are running in tip-top shape. If they're not, they can correct that in-house. But they also can help shine a light on where your software vendors may be not taking great care of you. That's something you're going to give up when you move to a hosting environment like Allscripts or Greenway, Prime Suite, or so on. What might be a better fit for you is instead of moving to a company who actually owns and operates and manages all the infrastructure, might be to move to an actual hosting data center where you own the server in the data center and a third-party company manages that for you. That gives you the insights and control, but also keeps one company from controlling both the hardware and equipment with your systems, as well as the application itself. You need to have, and this is from our own experience, you need to have two companies working on your systems together to resolve issues. Where in our case, ArcLight would be working as an advocate for you to make sure that your systems are performing, and if they're not, would work then with your vendor, be it Allscripts or whoever it might be, to get your systems performing properly. Well, that's all I've got for today. If you have any questions or concerns or would like to talk to us about helping you put together an effective disaster recovery plan, feel free to reach us at the number on your screen. Have a wonderful rest of your week.